a former most improved player, a former all-defensive first-teamer, a career that once looked like it was heading straight to the top of the WNBA. Now it's a name that shows up in headlines next to words like ejected, fined, and under fire. DiJonai Carrington went from one of the league's most respected two-way guards to the most talked-about player in the sport, for reasons that have nothing to do with box scores. This is the story of how she got here. It's the first quarter, United Center, Chicago. Sophie Cunningham is breaking away for what should be an easy transition layup. DiJonai Carrington is chasing from behind, trying to save 2 points the only way she can. What happens next changes the conversation around her for the rest of the season. Carrington's hustle led to a meeting at the rim, but instead of swatting the ball, she hit Cunningham hard in the face, sending her to the floor as officials quickly blew the whistle. Cunningham didn't stay down. She got up and got in Carrington's face and had to be held back by teammates as she shoved Carrington slightly before officials stepped in. The officials reviewed it. The foul got upgraded. DiJonai Carrington was ejected Saturday after being called for a flagrant 2 foul on Sophie Cunningham of the Indiana Fever. And minutes later, Carrington posted on social media the words "white privilege" and tagged the Fever. Cunningham, who is white, was shooting a fast break layup in the first quarter when Carrington, who is black, came from behind and hit her in the head and neck, knocking her to the court as the shot went in. That post did more damage than the foul itself. It set off one of the loudest debates the league has seen all year. Fox News commentators, former players, and fans all weighed in within hours. Carrington eventually addressed it days later, telling reporters the comment had nothing to do with the flagrant call itself. Instead, she said she was pointing at what she called a lack of consistency across the board when it comes to how officials hand out discipline in the league. That explanation didn't land the way she hoped. Here's the part that really lit the fuse. Nothing happened. 2 days after Carrington was ejected for blasting Sophie Cunningham in the face and then posting white privilege on social media, she checked into the Sky's next game. No discipline from the WNBA, no public explanation, nothing but silence. Fans noticed immediately, and they were not quiet about it. One fan called it one of the most absurd things they'd seen in sports, saying it should have triggered a significant suspension, but didn't. Another was blunter, writing that the league should increase the fines and remove players entirely, insisting this will all stop. A third simply said they'd stopped watching altogether, posting that the product was never going to be on their TV again. ESPN veteran Linda Cohn went on air and asked the question everyone was thinking. She pointed out this entire mess could have been avoided if the league had suspended Carrington for the flagrant foul in the first place, and added that the social media post itself broke WNBA policy. Carrington broke a rule and got no fine and no suspension for it. Cohn drew a direct comparison to Alyssa Thomas, who had been hit with a mandatory suspension and a fine for a flagrant foul on Caitlin Clark back in June. Commentator Jason Whitlock went further, calling for Carrington to be removed from the league entirely, writing that no one dares question the pattern because it would be called racist. Whitlock pointed to the fact that this wasn't an isolated incident. DiJonai Carrington has already been assessed 2 flagrant fouls this season, with the first coming in the season opener when she struck Minnesota's Jessica Shepard in the head. And then, 4 days later, it happened again. Not one incident, 3, across 3 games. During a loss to the Golden State Valkyries, Carrington was involved in contact with 2 different Valkyries players around the face, adding to the scrutiny she'd already drawn. She picked up a technical foul on the same night, shot just 1 for 9 from the field, and almost as if the chaos needed one more layer, a fan was removed from the arena after Carrington approached an official and pointed toward a spectator seated courtside. Across 3 games in 4 days, she had now been involved in face contact with 3 separate opponents, though she'd only been ejected the one time. The league, notably, had yet to announce any additional discipline over any of it. It's the kind of stretch that would end most players' seasons in the court of public opinion alone. But to understand how DiJonai Carrington ended up here, mid-controversy, mid-backlash, playing out a 1-year, $650,000 contract in a city that isn't even the one that made her, you have to go back, because this isn't where the story starts. This is where it nearly ends. Before any of the fouls, before the posts, before the fines, DiJonai Carrington was supposed to be a success story. The kind of player the WNBA points to when it wants to talk about development, patience, and payoff. She was born January 8, 1998, in San Diego, and by high school she was already a McDonald's All-American. The kind of label that gets you recruited by the biggest programs in the country. She landed at Stanford, one of the most storied women's basketball programs in America, and spent her first 3 seasons there. It didn't fully click. She transferred to Baylor for her final year, and it was there that things started to move. In her 1 season with the Lady Bears, Carrington averaged 14.1 points and 4.9 rebounds per game, and was named Big 12 Newcomer of the Year and the 6th Person of the Year. That single season was enough to get her drafted, but not high. She went 20th overall in the 2021 WNBA draft, a second-round pick, to the Connecticut Sun. Second-round picks don't usually become franchise cornerstones. Most of them fight for roster spots and disappear within a couple of years. Carrington had to earn a spot in training camp just to make the Suns' 11-player roster. She made it, and then year over year, she kept getting better. It wasn't flashy. It was the kind of gradual, unglamorous improvement that takes patience to notice. Carrington gradually improved over her time with Connecticut, significantly growing her statistical output with each consecutive season. By 2023, she was averaging 8.3 points a game and finished runner-up in 6th Player of the Year voting. Proof the coaching staff trusted her in real minutes, even off the bench. Then came 2024, the season that changed everything. She had a career year, averaging 12.7 points, 5.0 rebounds, 1.6 assists, and 1.6 steals per game. Numbers that made her one of the best players to come out of that entire 2021 draft class. On September 25, 2024, the WNBA announced that Carrington was named the Most Improved Player for 2024. 4 days later, on September 29, the league added another honor. She'd been named to the 2024 All-Defensive First Team, 2 major awards in the same week. For a 20th overall pick who'd had to fight for a roster spot 3 years earlier, this was validation. Analysts started calling her one of the top on-ball defenders in the entire league. She was at that point exactly what every front office wants, a versatile, physical two-way guard on an upward trend heading into her prime. And it's worth sitting with that physicality for a second, because it's the same trait that would later define her differently. During her time with Connecticut, she saw real playoff experience too. Over 3 years as a rotation regular, she played in 25 playoff games with the Sun, averaging 7.4 points and 3.1 rebounds a game. She wasn't just a regular season riser, she'd been tested in the games that mattered most. Fans online noticed the turnaround long before the awards made it official. Sun supporters had been tracking her development for years, pointing to her defensive versatility as the separator between her and other bench guards around the league. She wasn't the loudest name on that Connecticut roster that belonged to All-Star Alyssa Thomas. But by 2024, Carrington had become the piece that made the defense function at an elite level. It's easy to forget now, given everything that followed, just how good that version of her was. This was a player finishing 4th in Defensive Player of the Year voting, a player teams built defensive schemes around, a player who on paper should have been getting a max extension from the Sun rather than getting shipped out of town within months. But that same physical style, the exact thing that won her the awards, was already starting to draw a different kind of attention. Because right in the middle of that 2024 breakout, during the same playoff run that cemented her as an elite defender, something happened that would follow her for years. It happened in a first-round series against the Indiana Fever, and it happened to the most-watched rookie the league had ever had. During the 2024 WNBA playoffs, Carrington, then playing for the Connecticut Sun, accidentally poked Caitlin Clark in the right eye while attempting to defend a pass, sending her to the floor, holding her face in pain. It happened in the first quarter of Connecticut's Game 1 win, with Clark trying to make a pass to teammate Aaliyah Boston. No foul was called on the play, and Clark eventually got back to her feet and was fine to return to the game. The optics were brutal regardless of intent. Before coming back in, she was seen on the Fever bench grimacing, patting her face with a towel, and batting her right eye. Clark finished that game with 11 points on a rough 4 of 17 shooting and walked away sporting a visible black eye for the rest of the night. Within hours, alternate camera angles started circulating online and the tone shifted fast. One widely shared post from a Boston-based account argued the video evidence suggested Carrington may have intentionally hit Caitlin Clark and asked whether it looked unintentional. That post alone racked up massive engagement and forced the story into a second news cycle. By Tuesday's media availability, a reporter put the question directly to Carrington: did she mean to hit Clark in the eye? Her answer became one of the most replayed quotes of her career. She said she didn't even know why she'd intend to hit anybody in the eye, calling the idea nonsensical. and insisted she hadn't even realized she'd made contact. She'd been trying to make a play on the ball and followed through into Clark's face by accident, adding plainly that it's never intentional and not even the type of player that I am. Clark backed her up almost immediately, speaking to reporters days later, with the bruising nearly gone from her eye. Clark said flatly that it wasn't intentional by any means and told people to just watch the play if they wanted proof. Coming from the player who'd actually been hit, that should have ended the story. For a while, it mostly did. Connecticut went on to win the series, eliminating Clark and the Fever from the postseason, and the eye poke became just one moment inside a much bigger playoff run. Except moments like that don't actually disappear. They wait. 2 years later, the instant Carrington's flagrant foul on Sophie Cunningham went viral. That old clip resurfaced within hours. New context, same footage. Dave Portnoy, a well-known Caitlin Clark supporter, shared the old eye poke video again, calling Carrington the dirtiest player in the WNBA. And that repost alone crossed 1 million views. Riley Gaines and a wave of other commentators pushed the same clip back into circulation within the same news cycle. What had been a single unfortunate playoff moment in 2024 was now being read as the first data point in a pattern. Her old coach at Connecticut, Stephanie White, was asked about the through line directly after the Cunningham incident. White didn't dodge it. She said she didn't think Carrington intentionally went for Cunningham's neck the way it looked, but added that it happened regardless, and that she thought the ejection was the right call. White also made a point of saying, Carrington has always been a relentless competitor who won't concede an uncontested layup. Defending the intent while still acknowledging the outcome crossed a line. That's the tension that's followed Carrington for 2 years now. Intent versus outcome. A defender playing the exact style that won her most improved player and an all-defensive first-team nod, but landing that same physicality on faces, eyes, and necks in ways that keep going viral. Fans and commentators split almost entirely along which of those two words they choose to focus on. What almost nobody was talking about in the middle of all that noise was what was happening off the court. Because right as her name was becoming a lightning rod for debate about her style of play, DiJonai Carrington's career was quietly falling apart in a completely different way. Through trades, roster overhauls, and eventually an injury that nearly ended her season for good. Right after the best season of her career, the most improved player trophy, the all-defensive nod, the eye poke controversy and all, DiJonai Carrington's own team decided to move on from her. The Connecticut Sun traded guard DiJonai Carrington, the WNBA's most improved player in 2024, to the Dallas Wings, as part of a massive 4-team swap that also sent all-star Satou Sabally to the Phoenix Mercury. It wasn't a small, quiet trade either. The deal reshuffled 4 different rosters at once. Dallas received Carrington along with a first-round pick, while Connecticut brought back guard J.C. Sheldon and an additional draft pick. Under new coach Rachid Meziani, Connecticut had now watched 4 of its 2024 starters, Carrington, Alyssa Thomas, Breonna Jones, and Tiasha Harris, walk out the door in the same offseason, either by trade or free agency. For Carrington personally, there was a silver lining buried in the move. She was headed to Dallas to reunite with general manager Curt Miller, the same executive who had originally drafted her to Connecticut, and she'd be playing alongside a new generation of talent, including rising star Paige Buchers. It looked on paper like a fresh start with familiar people around her. It didn't stay that way for long. Carrington was traded to the Wings before the start of the 2025 season, but by August, she was on the move again, this time from Dallas to the Minnesota Lynx in a deal that sent Diamond Miller, Carly Samuelson, and a future second-round pick back to Dallas in return. 2 trades, 2 franchises, 1 single calendar year for a player who'd spent her first 4 seasons building stability in Connecticut. This was a complete reversal. No home, no long-term system, just a jersey that kept changing color. The stats from that stretch tell their own story. Across her 31 combined regular season appearances between Dallas and Minnesota, she averaged 9.5 points, 3.6 rebounds, 1.5 assists, and 1.1 steals in just under 21 minutes a game. Solid, but her playing time actually decreased once she landed in Minnesota. She'd gone from being a foundational piece of a playoff roster to a rotational addition on a team already built around other stars. Then, right as the Lynx were gearing up for a real championship push, the floor dropped out from under her for real. DiJonai Carrington, The very player who had poked Caitlin Clark in the eye during that playoff series was set to miss the rest of the year, after sustaining what was described as a significant midfoot injury. It happened during the first round of the 2025 playoffs, the exact stage of competition she'd built her reputation on. The timing was almost impossible to script. Carrington and Caitlin Clark, two players whose names had been tied together since that 2024 eye poke, ended up on the injury shelf together in the same postseason, both watching their teams fight on without them. Lynx head coach Cheryl Reeve didn't sugarcoat what it meant for the roster, telling reporters it was a big blow personally to Carrington and to the team, adding that injuries are part of the game, but obviously when it happens, it's tough. Minnesota was left without one of its top defensive stoppers heading into a title chase. For Carrington, it meant the second half of a whirlwind season, the one where she'd already been traded once, ending not with a signature performance, but on a training table, watching a championship-caliber roster try to win without her. It's worth sitting with what that injury actually cost her. This wasn't a minor ankle roll or a 2-week absence. A significant midfoot injury is the kind that threatens a player's explosiveness long-term. The exact tool a perimeter defender relies on to stay in front of guards and contest shots at the rim. For a player whose entire professional identity had been built on physical, disruptive defense, a foot injury isn't just a missed stretch of games. It's a direct hit to the thing that made her valuable in the first place. She spent months rehabbing that injury, missing not just the rest of the 2025 postseason, but stretching all the way into the following year. By the time she was ready to play again, she wasn't a Lynx player anymore, and she wasn't a Wings player either. She was a free agent looking for a third team in 3 years, trying to prove her body could still do what had made her a most improved player winner in the first place. That search led her to Chicago, and Chicago is where the story that opened this video. The Cunningham foul, the white privilege post, the fines, the fan ejection actually took place. But getting there wasn't simple either. It came with its own extended, frustrating delay. One more setback in a stretch of her career that had become defined by them. The Chicago Sky brought DiJonai Carrington in during the offseason with a clear plan. General manager Jeff Pagliacca made no secret of what he thought she'd bring, saying the team was thrilled to add her, pointing to her speed, defense, versatility, and fierce competitive spirit, and adding they couldn't wait to see her electrify Skytown. It was a 1-year deal worth $650,000, a modest but respectable contract for a player trying to rebuild her value after a lost postseason. The plan made sense on paper. Chicago had gone 10-34 the year before, missing the playoffs for a second straight season under a brand new head coach. They needed exactly what Carrington offered, a proven perimeter defender who could anchor a unit that had been porous the year before. She was supposed to be the veteran presence, steadying a rebuilding roster. Then the rehab that had started with that foot injury dragged into the new season. Instead of strengthening Chicago's perimeter defense from opening night, she was still working her way back, forcing the Sky to navigate much of the season without one of the league's most respected defensive players. Game after game passed. The Sky started slow, sitting at 9-18 before she'd played a single minute. When she finally made her season debut, it came 27 games into a 44-game campaign, more than halfway through the year. Against, of all teams, her old team, the Connecticut Sun. There was an obvious symbolism to that matchup, playing her first game of the season against the franchise that drafted her, developed her, and eventually let her go. Carrington herself framed the return in personal terms, telling reporters the previous 10 months had been one of the most challenging and transformative journeys of my life, and thanking her rehab team and her support system for getting her back onto the floor at all. Her coach, Tyler Marsh, said she'd been looking sharp in practice leading into that debut. For a moment, it looked like the redemption arc the Sky had signed up for. A veteran defender, finally healthy, returning mid-season to help steady a struggling roster during a late push. That's the version of this story Chicago's front office was hoping to write. It's not the version that played out. Within weeks of finally getting on the floor, Carrington was at the center of the Cunningham flagrant foul, the ejection, and the social post that turned into a league-wide story. That single incident set off a chain reaction that hasn't fully stopped since. Under the league's 2026 rules, a flagrant 2 carries 2 flagrant points and a $1,000 fine, with an automatic 2-game suspension triggered once a player accumulates 3 total points. Carrington was fined for the Cunningham play. Days later, she was fined again. A separate technical foul against the Golden State Valkyries. her second technical of the season, which under league rules carries its own $500 penalty since players are fined for each of their first 3 technical fouls in a season. 2 fines within the same week, on top of an ejection and a social media firestorm that the league still hadn't formally addressed. And through all of it, the on-court production kept slipping. That Golden State game where she picked up the technical, she also shot just 1 for 9 from the floor. Not the kind of performance that quiets a controversy, the kind that adds fuel to it. Fans who'd once celebrated her as a most improved player were now openly questioning whether she belonged in the league spotlight at all. Some pointed back to her rookie-to-star trajectory and argued she deserved patience after everything her body had been through. Others weren't willing to extend that grace anymore, especially with a second-star player now involved and a second viral moment stacking on top of the first. The strange part is, buried underneath every fine and every viral clip, there are still flashes of exactly the player Chicago thought they were signing. In one game against the Seattle Storm, she came off her worst outing of the year, an ejection against the Fever that limited her to just 3 minutes, and responded with a career-high 26 points, 6 rebounds, 5 steals, and an assist in the very next game. That's the two-way talent that won her an all-defensive first-team spot 2 years earlier, still very much present when the noise dies down long enough for her to play basketball. But that's exactly the tension defining her right now. A player capable of a 26-point, 5-steal night one day, and a viral ejection days before or after it. A player whose general manager praised her competitive spirit as a selling point, now watching that same trait generate headlines the front office never wanted. A player who at 28 is no longer the breakout rookie-turned-star climbing a clean trajectory. She's on her 4th team in 3 years, on a 1-year deal, trying to prove her body and her reputation can both hold up at the same time. The WNBA, for its part, has stayed almost entirely silent on all of it. No suspension for the Cunningham foul beyond the standard fine. No comment on the social media post. No statement after the fan removal at Chase Center. The Sky, the league, and the arena have all declined to comment publicly on what's transpired, leaving fans, commentators, and former players to fill that silence with their own conclusions. What happens next for DiJonai Carrington is genuinely unresolved. She's still on the floor, she's still fined, still scrutinized, still capable of both a career night and a headline-generating night in the same week. The player who once got 2 of the league's biggest individual honors in the same September is now trying to hold on to a roster spot on a rebuilding team, carrying a reputation shaped as much by viral clips as by anything in a box score. Whether that ends in a real second act or in her name simply fading out of the conversation the way careers sometimes do, nobody, including the league itself, has said.